Welcome to our third and last day of CAETS 2021. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce our moderator, José Luis Roces, from Academia Nacional de Ingeniería, Argentina, who is going to present Technical Session 5, Education on Engineering.
Hi, I am José Luis Roces, member of the Argentinian National Academy of Engineering. I am very proud to be the moderator of the fifth session, which is focused on education. During my 50 years as professor of engineering and member of the staff of several universities, I understood that the main challenge on education is how to achieve balance in teaching basic concepts and updating knowledge. Today, this dilemma is quite important because we are living in a profound technological transformation, digital and energetic. Both topics will be dealt with in our panel. But let me put in context our next dialogue. Engineering is one of the key professions that shape our world. The innovation from engineering have created new ways of living and working, and they have shaped our societies, becoming crucial to supporting and maintaining the development of our world. From the supply of essential services, such as power and water, the bioengineering hospitals, the products of engineering are threaded through people's lives, both individually and collectively. This means that engineers have a great responsibility, but also a great opportunity to ensure that they have a positive influence on society. Two trends on engineering education we consider in the design of this session. First, the need of a new generation with awareness and talent to improve innovation on emission reduction and climate change within the impact of the digital transformation. Second, to move towards a socially relevant and outward-facing engineering curricula with multidisciplinary learning and particular emphasis on student choice. With those ideas on mind, we are very satisfied that the three presentations of today are examples of how new disciplines such as system thinking, artificial intelligence, and dynamic modeling are forming a new generation of engineers prepared to face the complexity of today's world. After the presentation, we will have a period of question and answers. And I would like to encourage the audience to submit written questions to the panel through the Zoom chat during this meeting, and we will address them after the presentation. Finally, as has been tradition to the previous CAETS symposiums, there will be space to know the opinion of the students. We have invited 4 students of different universities and orientations. They will answer 2 questions. Why do they choose to study engineering, and what actions they propose to mitigate climate change? So we hope that it will be a profitable session for everybody. And now let me introduce our speakers. And I want to remember you that their CVs are available on the CAETS 2021 website for consultation. The first in this panel will be Professor Nilay Shah from the Imperial College of London. He will talk about how can engineers work with policy makers to achieve emissions reduction targets. He will describe an excellent system approach and a practical experience to net zero. In the second place, Dr. Nuria Oliver from the Royal Academy of Spain will present how artificial intelligence is changing both what we teach and how we teach it. She is an expert, and her presentation will show us the immense potential of AI in the education and engineering, and especially to personalize the learning experience. Finally, our third speaker is Professor Eduardo Fracassi from the Institute of Technology of Buenos Aires, a private university, who will share with us the experience using the En-ROADS Climate Action Simulator. Eduardo has taught this simulator in more than 200 events with 5,000 participants in 6 countries of Latin America. So welcome everybody, and thank you to be with us.
Hello, my name is Nilay Shah. I'm from Imperial College London and also representing the UK's Royal Academy of Engineering. And I'm going to talk to you about my opinion in terms of how engineers can work with policymakers to achieve emissions reduction targets. Thank you very much for inviting me to this event. So there are a number of challenges in engineers engaging with policymakers, and I want to give my personal opinion and also then use a specific example of a project that we've been involved in, which brings it to light. So first of all, I think it's very important when engaging with policymakers to have a clarity of vision and a roadmap and indeed a positive view of the future. I think engineers should be seen as people that bring solutions rather than people that bring problems. And that is really what policymakers are looking for. Second of all, I think it's important to find the right balance between being reactive versus being proactive. So occasionally, it's very important to be reactive. In other words, to be able to respond very quickly to a request. For example, what are some of the engineering challenges to recover from COVID? But equally, there are times when we should anticipate problems and anticipate issues before policymakers have thought about them. And we set out our own agenda and develop some proactive projects so that we can actually bring some ready-made potential solutions to policymakers. What we do find, though, is that the engineering profession is very broad and it's not always homogeneous in terms of its views. So it's not the case that the engineering profession can just collectively agree something and bring it to policymakers. So within our profession, we need to make sure to engage with the different branches of engineering and work hard to reach some kind of consensus. Another important feature of engagement with policymakers is the importance of neutrality. So engineers should not be seen only to be pushing for a specific solution, like nuclear power being the solution to everything or hydrogen being the solution to everything. It's important to always bring a balanced perspective. And the way I want to cover these topics is by using a case study of a large project that I'm involved in called Systems Approach to Net Zero. So Systems Approach to Net Zero is a project which has been launched by something called the National Engineering Policy Centre of the United Kingdom. It comes under the umbrella of the Royal Academy of Engineering, and it's a unified voice for 43 different engineering organisations, which are our main professional organisations in the UK, which represent around 450,000 professional engineers. The idea for the NEPC is to give policymakers a single route to advice from across the engineering profession. And we inform and respond to policy issues, so we have this balance of proactive and reactive approaches. One of the main projects we're involved in is around net zero. So the United Kingdom a few years ago set a target of net zero GHG emissions by 2050. And what we're trying to do in a specific project called Systems Approach to Net Zero is to apply a multidisciplinary systems perspective to support climate change policy. The idea is to draw on expertise of a huge range of engineering disciplines and to combine this with some input from social science and systems science. And what we're looking at is to add value to the many projects that are already going on in this area, particularly looking at transition to net zero future, covering systems issues like infrastructure, governance, skills, resilience, and focusing on some difficult topics, for example, decarbonizing construction and decarbonizing aviation. So in this project, our focus is on the systems approach. Why are we following a systems approach? First of all, let me comment on what we mean by systems approach, because that is not always clear to everybody. So here what we're trying to do is to integrate all the relevant factors and context in decision making so that we are really taking the best possible decisions by focusing on the challenges that are not single issue challenges, but systems challenges. It's often used in engineering for complex problems which have many elements in them. So the reason why net zero and climate mitigation needs a systems approach is that there are rapid and simultaneous transformations of many different subsystems. So there's the transport system, the energy system, the industrial system, the housing infrastructure, and so on. If we do not coordinate the changes in these systems, we will end up in a, first of all, non-cost efficient solution. Second of all, probably lock ourselves in to the wrong technology choices. So without a systems approach, we may find that the parts of the system do not connect effectively. And because the parts of the system do have strong interactions, so there are strong interactions between transport, housing, industry, energy, and so on, we really need to look at the system level as well as the subsystem. So here on the right-hand side of my slide here, you can see a number of the topics that need to be interconnected when we're looking at a systems approach. And we find this is a very good way for the engineering profession to engage with policymakers. Systems approach has some key elements. First of all, and central, is to develop a shared understanding among stakeholders. So that involves the industrial stakeholders, policymakers, engineering organizations, and so on. We need to have a shared understanding of what is the overall goal of such a project and what is the overall framework we may follow. We then need strong leadership and governance structures so that we can actually progress this project in an effective way. And then looking at some of the technical aspects of the problem, we need to look at these sectors and map the interdependencies and interactions. And later I'll be showing you an example of such a systems map for decarbonizing construction. With these projects, it's very important to try to identify some early outputs that can be shared amongst the community and with policymakers to demonstrate, first of all, how the approach works, and second of all, to demonstrate that the type of thinking does actually give successful outcomes. So one example of what we've been doing in this project is what we call quick identification of low regrets options. So these are some early opportunities for policymakers to make interventions in energy, industrial, transport, and housing systems, which will be good opportunities to take us to emissions reduction, which are not then going to need rework in the future. So that's what I mean by low regret interventions. And then most importantly, sometimes in a systems approach, we need a different way of understanding the problem. And that's where bringing together all the different branches of engineering can be extremely helpful, although sometimes also it takes a long time to understand each other's perspectives. So these are some themes of our systems approach to net zero project. The first theme is collecting together the stakeholders and building awareness of the value of a systems approach and the demand for engineering advice on net zero. So there we have engaged with a number of senior politicians and civil servants to explain, first of all, what is the systems approach, and second of all, how it can support decision-making towards net zero, in particular from an engineering point of view. The second theme is what we call supporting the government in operationalizing systems approaches for net zero. So in this theme, our program is actually working with different government departments and hosting a range of workshops for senior civil servants to demonstrate how they can embed systems approaches and systems engineering thinking in their daily work. And this has been maybe the most successful theme so far, because it has had a training and skills development impact, and it will leave those government departments with some new ways of doing their work. And then the third theme is providing systems insights and other engineering-based advice in relation to net zero. And so this is more towards the technical side, and therefore it's also giving support in terms of some practical advice in the key subsystems. We're also developing some specific topics which are related to the short-term priorities within the UK. First of all, the green recovery. So that is really how do we rebuild some of the economic and other infrastructure after the COVID pandemic. Second of all, the UK is hosting the next UN Conference of the Parties in November, and we have a number of initiatives that we are working on related to systems for COP26. And the third is the UK government is publishing and producing a lot of plans, for example, recently a 10-point plan for climate mitigation. So those are some short-term actions our project is also taking. So systems approaches to policy making, which is that first theme, what we have been doing with the senior civil servants is working with them to identify some of the key elements and pressures within their specific system, which are either providing opportunities or challenges, and where interventions are going to make the most difference in bringing their system in line with a net zero economy. In this process, we can identify synergies and interdependencies between different decarbonisation strategies, different elements of the system, and different policy priorities. And we can balance trade-offs, for example, cost versus emissions, and trying to identify where there are co-benefits, such as health benefits due to reduced air pollution. In the systems approach, it's important not only to look at the technical aspects, but also the social, cultural, and behavioral factors, because those can be opportunities and barriers. Importantly also is the so-called time pressures and sequencing. So working out when you are adapting a complex system, what is the right time phasing? What do you do first? What do you do second? What do you do third? This is often a kind of problem that is not well understood, and it's very important to get it right. In any major transition of a system, and net zero is of course a very major transition, there will be risks. So we need to identify what are the big risks and what are the mitigation strategies, and are there going to be any unintended consequences, and how can we deal with them? The future is always uncertain, so in the systems approach, we need to first of all identify what are the main sources of uncertainty and what impact they will have on our system, and then to decide how we will build in adaptation possibilities as well. We also need to be honest with politicians and indeed the general public about the scale of the transition challenge, and we need to be able to explore and understand as we make interventions to quantify how effective they are, and if necessary to allow ourselves to adapt and make changes. So we have some activities which are at the national scale, and we have some activities which are at the regional scale. I'll talk to you about the national scale activities because those are most relevant for national engineering institutions like Royal Academy and the Argentinian Academy. So our first initiative is very much to support the institutions, governance frameworks, and leadership structures across central government. And really what we're trying to do there is to provide opportunities for the government to engage with us to give analytical and technical advice on climate, to help the government translate the net zero target into all areas of policy, and of course to reiterate the message that net zero requires stable leadership and long-term thinking. At the national scale, we also need to develop analytical capability, information flow, reporting, and other evidence that supports really good quality decision-making. So what we can help with as engineers is to ensure government bodies have access to the right data, have access to the right evidence, and that they are also using that in the best possible way. We can support them in quantifying and publishing carbon emission assessments for all public sector policies. So every time future projects or future investments are planned, we can help establish the emissions impacts of those. And of course, we can maximize the contribution of technology and support the mobilization of finance and international collaboration. So engineers can help underpin mission-driven research, can provide technical advice to something like a national infrastructure investment bank, and of course to support international collaborations, which I think for climate mitigation are going to be particularly important. So one case study of our work is decarbonizing construction. So construction is a large sector in most countries in the world, and construction is very interesting because it also has a long-term impact in terms of the performance of the buildings, in terms of energy efficiency and so on, once the construction is complete. So we've identified 4 important areas for construction. First of all, product outcomes. How good is the quality of the building? Design and specification. How good is the thinking which goes into it? Construction and reuse. How is the construction process itself as sustainable as possible? And then finally, government procurement. Government actually procures a lot of construction in terms of refurbishment of new buildings, and they can drive a lot of innovation by specifying high specifications and large amount of renewable content. And we found in this project of decarbonizing construction a lot of complexities. For example, the culture of the industry, the need for long-term certainty, the lack of education and skills, the variability in design standards and materials, some aspects of insurance regulation, and indeed, what is the outcome which is being valued? You know, how do you actually value a low carbon building? And so we have now put together a briefing document on how the government can achieve low carbon construction. And what we've been doing is taking a systems approach and using that to address not only emissions, but also wider social, environmental, and economic factors. And we have also used this briefing note to understand how we can also influence aspects such as finance and insurance. In doing this project, we developed a systems map, and this is just really not for you to read, but it's for you to understand the complexity of some of the challenges around the emissions reduction targets we've set in the UK and many other countries. So when we look at the actual elements and interactions required in the decarbonizing of construction, we see that it brings in many other subsectors and many other elements. And it just goes to highlight the importance of this systems approach to policymaking in net zero. So as our project develops, we've been thinking quite a bit about what does success look like. And I think every time as engineers we engage with policymaking, we should have in mind what is a successful outcome of such an engagement. And of course, for us, the highest level success outcome would be the UK meeting its 2050 emissions target in the optimal way. And to achieve that, the government would have a clear vision of the system which is required to meet net zero, and it has aligned all the stakeholders with this goal. The individual departments, which are covering different aspects of the system, like transport, industry, energy, and housing, are working together effectively with the shared goal, and they understand the interactions between their different policies. The government can take quick and effective decisions in the face of uncertainty and can adapt as new information becomes available. And the government is clear about where decisions should be devolved, for example, to professional bodies or industry associations. And based on that are some capabilities that government should have based on engineering input, so that it has analytical capability to do detailed systems analysis. It has governance mechanisms and systems capability to coordinate activities across departments, and it has access to the best engineering expertise to inform net zero policy making. So that is where the engineering community comes in. Some more aspects of what success looks like. First of all, the system, which involves policy, regulation, education, industry, business models, and so on, is all tuned as a functioning machine to deliver the net zero goal, and of course to look for co-benefits. There are ambitious and realistic interim targets, because of course net zero is a 2050 target. We need interim targets, we need urgent action, and stakeholders understand, you know, what that urgent action is and what is their role in delivering. And they feel incentivized, so there's a strong business case, and second of all, empowered to act and to start intervening. And you can see an example on the right-hand side in the areas of change required from decarbonizing construction, which is we need improvements in designs and specification, in the process of construction, in valuing the outcomes of the product, that green buildings are actually valued, and the whole business of construction is a changed business. So some conclusions. First of all, I think it's very important to take time to develop a consolidated view. So you can see that engineering engaging with policy making is not something to rush. To develop a consolidated view does take time. It's difficult to get consensus. I can tell you that in our working group on this project, there have been a lot of discussions around, for example, how challenging should we set interim targets for decarbonizing construction? You know, how large will be the role of hydrogen in the future energy system? These are topics where, you know, there are no right or wrong answers, and it's important to try to find a way to have a broadly harmonized view so that when the engineering profession speaks with policymakers, it's not giving 10 different perspectives, which just causes confusion. We need to focus as engineers on the challenges which add a lot of value to current policy. So there's no point just trying to do small incremental changes to current policy, but rather to think about some of the big important issues that we're facing. And that's why our focus has been on systems thinking rather than focusing on individual technology. So instead of focusing our policy advice or project advice on individual technologies, for example, you know, power generation or heating systems, we've been focusing on integrated systems thinking. We do need to interact at key points. So we don't want to do a project where we set a target for the work, we go away for 1 year, and then we come back and engage with the policymakers. It's better to have interactions at key points so that we can adapt to feedback that we're receiving. And I think particularly important for the engineering profession is to be proactive, and therefore to think ahead and think about the major policy challenges, and not only to wait to receive questions from policymakers, but to think about what the major policy challenges are and to propose potential solutions before even being asked. So thank you for your attention, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of your questions.
Hello, I am Nuria Oliver. I'm a permanent member of the Spanish Royal Academy of Engineering and co-founder and vice president of ELIS, the European Laboratory for Learning and Intelligence Systems. Today, I'm going to share my views on the intersection between artificial intelligence and education. But before I enter into the subject matter, let's think a little bit about the context that we live in. We are immersed in what is called as a fourth industrial revolution, which is profoundly changing society as we know it in a similar way as former industrial revolutions. The fourth industrial revolution represents an intimate relationship unprecedented in our history between the biological, the digital, and the physical worlds. And it is enabled by key disciplines such as nanotechnology, biotechnology, genetic engineering, and of course, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is actually ubiquitous in our daily interactions with most of the digital services that we use. AI algorithms are determining which friends we have, which updates we read from them, which news we read, which movies we watch, which books we buy, which music we listen to. Of course, we can talk to our phones and we can talk to our smart speakers, and they understand us thanks to AI tools. Increasingly, mapping applications are also using AI algorithms to optimize the routes to take into account traffic, for example. For decades, stock market transactions are determined by algorithms as well. And something similar has happened in the manufacturing processes where it is increasingly automated using robots enabled by AI. We wouldn't have autonomous vehicles without the help of AI. And science is really leveraging and being revolutionized by applying AI methods to large-scale non-structured data. But beyond all these elements, AI algorithms are starting to pervade consequential areas to human lives. For example, increasingly AI algorithms will support the clinical decision-making and the diagnosis made by doctors, or AI algorithms are already supporting judges in their judicial sentences. And it is because of this ubiquity of AI methods that artificial intelligence has become a political issue, as this slide reflects, where it shows the number of times that the term AI and the term machine learning, which is the discipline within AI that is based on learning from data using statistics, has been mentioned in the UK Parliament and in the US Congress across time. And we can see that it's only since 2016 that AI has penetrated this political sphere. And therefore, it's no surprise that more than 50 countries in the world have developed their national AI strategies. Any AI strategy, from my perspective, should include 5 key dimensions: the technological dimension, the legal and regulatory dimension, the ethical dimension, the societal and education dimension, and the economy and labor dimension. I don't have time to talk about any of them today, except for the education dimension, which is the focus of this talk. AI is impacting education in 2 ways. First, in what we teach, because with the 4th industrial revolution, I believe that we should be teaching some new skills, but also in how we teach, because thanks to AI, we can actually change the way we teach. So let's look at each of these elements in more detail. In terms of what we teach, it is clear that the 4th industrial revolution is transforming the labor market. As it has happened in previous revolutions, there is going to be a displacement of a lot of jobs and an automation of a lot of tasks within many professions, in such a way that roughly a third of the new professions will be related to technology. And the World Economic Forum, for example, predicts that there will be a net creation of millions of jobs, but these jobs will be very different from the jobs that will be displaced because of the artificial intelligence revolution. Only in Europe, it is estimated that there will be, in the short term, an availability of hundreds of thousands of new technology-related jobs. So one of the key questions is, are we getting ready? Are we preparing the next generations for such a transformation of the labor market? From my perspective, we should be focusing on 2 key types of skills. First of all, I believe that we should introduce computational thinking as a core transversal subject since 1st grade in compulsory education. Computational thinking is a term that was coined by Professor Seymour Papert from MIT in 1980. And the main idea is to teach students how to solve problems using technology. It entails developing 5 core competencies: algorithmic thinking, programming, data, hardware, and networking. And I think every child and adolescent of the 21st century should be competent in computational thinking. Is the equivalent to knowing how to read and write in the 21st century. There are a few initiatives on teaching computational thinking, but many of them are private initiatives. And I think we should really think about and try to make a profound transformation of the compulsory educational system for all children, not only for those that can benefit from these private initiatives. In addition to teaching computational thinking, I think we should also invest in developing creativity, critical thinking, and skills that are key to the existence of the Homo sapiens and that have been key to our survival, such as our social and emotional intelligences. I provide a discussion on such skills in a chapter called Digital Erudites in the book called Digital Natives Do Not Exist, or in Spanish, Nativos Digitales No Existen, where I discuss some of the key elements or in emotional and social intelligence that I think we might not be nurturing enough and that I believe are absolutely fundamental for our survival as a species. In addition to what we teach, AI is really revolutionizing how we teach. And in this element, the key aspect has been the tremendous progress that we have had in the AI field in the areas of pattern recognition, including natural language processing, speech recognition, speech synthesis, automatic translation, computer vision, so the analysis of videos and images, personalization, recommendations, and so forth. Let's see some examples of how AI is contributing to improving learning. First of all, we have examples of improving early learning using software that helps children understand some basic concepts in their early years, both software, but also some robots, such as, for example, the robots that we see here on this slide, Keep On from the computer scientist Brian Scasalati's team, or Tegas from the MIT Media Labs team. AI methods also allow us to adapt the learning to the different abilities and speeds of different children. We can also, of course, accelerate and improve the teaching of languages, because thanks to AI methods today, we can recognize speech and we can also teach, automatically translate and teach other languages. And these are a couple of commercial examples on how AI is helping teach and learn foreign languages. AI algorithms are also behind software that teaches students how to write. But beyond teaching certain skills, I think one of the most important opportunities of AI methods is in supporting students that might have some learning difficulties or differences. For example, there are several software products or projects that allow the detection of dyslexia and help students to learn how to read. There are also examples of using technology empowered with AI to support students with emotional learning difficulties, for example, in the autism spectrum or with ADHD. And of course, thanks to the use of speech recognition systems, natural language processing systems, or computer vision systems, which are all areas within AI, we can build assistive technology that can help the students that might have some physical impairment for their learning. AI will enable us to reach the vision of having one-to-one tutoring as opposed to one-to-many tutoring, being able to adapt the teaching to the needs of the student, both using software, like the examples that we see here, but also using robots, like the example here that supports students with their reading assignments. This is another example from Portugal, from Professor Ana Paiva's team, using an emotional robot that is teaching students how to play chess. And beyond improving learning, the other key area in education and AI is providing a better support to teachers and school administrators. For example, we can use AI methods to be able to do some individual student tracking and understand how well students are learning different concepts and with which speeds to diagnose potential learning difficulties. There are many chatbots today, of course, all of them empowered by AI, that are providing support for administrative tasks and that also provide 24/7 customer service to the parents of the students or to the students themselves. AI tools can also be used to perform intelligent scheduling of all the teachers or professors and the different subjects that are necessary in each school year. Some AI methods have been used to do automatic grading or to support teachers and professors in their grading so they can do it faster and more efficiently. And also there are some AI methods that have been used and that are used to provide career advice to students. So once they know the different interests of the students and their grades and their characteristics, AI models can recommend them certain careers that might be best suited to their profiles. And finally, there is a tremendous opportunity to be able to use AI to foster a safe environment for the students, as this project, for example, illustrates. This is called the CREEP project and is to detect cyberbullying in schools. In sum, artificial intelligence is at the core of the fourth industrial revolution and is profoundly changing the world that we live in. I am convinced that we won't be able to tackle the pressing global challenges that we face without the help of AI. In this context, AI is also disrupting education in two ways. First, in what needs to be taught to the new generations so they can contribute to tomorrow's society. And second, in how we teach. Thanks to AI, we will be able to have a personalized universal education that is catered to the specific needs and strengths of each student. What more could we ask for? Thank you.
Hi, this is a presentation for CAETS 2021 Argentina about the future of energy. I'm Eduardo Fracassi. I'm the leader of ITBA's Climate Change Awareness Initiative. So, ITBA is an engineering school in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And the degrees are about industrial engineering, chemical engineering, petroleum engineering, mechanical engineering, and so on. And since the 90s, ITBA has followed the MIT Management School organization change tools and leadership. And one of this initiative is the project that I am leading. We use the MIT Management Sustainable Initiative tools like simulators, and professors from MIT created Climate Interactive, which is an NGO that spreads this knowledge all through the world. And we are going to show you the results of these events that we organized in Latin America, mostly in Argentina, but also in Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, Mexico, and Uruguay. We did this in mostly in universities and secondary schools. Universities that could be private or public. And you can see all the events that Climate Interactive has done worldwide. Some of these events that you see here in Latin America were done by ITBA. What are the results? Well, the first impact is that since 2018, all first-year undergrad and students at ITBA use both the MIT C-Roads and N-Road simulators. These include the best available research published in peer-reviewed journals, and we have we did more than 214 events since 2013 in 9 years. 5,000 people participated in this event from 6 different countries. So we started in 2013 to measure the effectiveness of the work climate event simulations that we were organizing, doing a longitudinal study with pre and post surveys. This research was very much interesting for Climate Interactive, and 2 people, Juliette Ronnie-Varga from the University of Massachusetts and John Stemmer from MIT, took this study and published it in the journal PLOS ONE, as you see here. And I will try to share the main result of this research is that we find that statistically significant gains in the 3 areas. First is knowledge of climate change causes and dynamics and impacts. Second place, affected engagement, including greater feelings of urgency and hope. You see urgency here, and you have hope here. And these lead to more intent of action, climate action, and desire to learn more. And contrary to the information deficit model that's current today, we find that gains in urgency lead to more intent to action and desire to learn. But on the contrary, more knowledge does not lead to intent to action and desire to learn. So this is very important because we find that this learning model is superior. And then we participated in 2016 in the MIT Climate Callback competition with a project that was created. A 19-year-old bioengineering student proposing setting air conditioners a little higher at 25 degrees Celsius, after observing the air conditioner used by their family. Her father's used the air conditioner at 18 degrees, and she thought they are cold. They must use the extra blanket. So what about using the air conditioner at 22 degrees or more? And we did a study. We presented the proposal and we won in the industry category. But this was very important because this saved about 14% of the energy used for air conditioning, and the government must pay for a big part of this energy. So the president called us and implemented this proposal in Argentina with a TV campaign, use your air conditioner at 24 degrees. Here we had the president of the ITBA governance board, our rector at the time, and these are the members of the student Kiri team that helped me with this proposal and organizing these events in Latin America. And the networks that we helped us do these events are the System Dynamics Society, the Latin American chapter, the Colombian System Dynamics Association, and the Brazilian System Dynamic chapter, and two lately, the Climate Reality Project, Mexico mostly. Now I'm going to show you one of these simulators. This is the En-route simulator. It has here to the left, the global sources of primary energy. I will reset this simulator, and this through the year to the 21st century, you see 2000, 2020, 40, 60, 2080. The energy produced from coal in brown, dark brown. In red, the energy produced by oil. In blue, the energy produced from natural gas. And in green, the energy produced from renewable sources. And bioenergy in purple, and in light blue, nuclear. The energy production is measured in exajoules per year. This graph at the right shows the temperature change along the 21st century. You see, for 2020, we have a growth of a little more than 1 degree comparing with temperatures from the Industrial Revolution. So there is a temperature change of about 3.6 degrees. The Paris Agreement, the needs that was signed in 2015 by more than 190 nations, state that the temperatures should be between these two lines. The temperature should be a 1.5, that's the ideal temperature, up to 2 degrees. You see that the basic scenario is 3.6 degrees. So we participants in the workshops use these sliders about energy supply, transportation, building and industry, or population and economic growth, land and industry emissions from deforestation or other gases like methane and oxides of nitrogen, or carbon removal climate actions like planting trees or technological removal of these gases. So if I set 50% climate action, you can see that you will have in blue bioenergy, carbon capture and sequestration, biochar here at top, and forestation should be down in the lot, and direct air captured by machinery with the fans, big fans, and chemical products is a little in purple, this purple line, and mineralization that is transforming carbon dioxide into a mineral, into stone. It's another method for removal carbon dioxide from the air. Here, the simulator shows examples, the big measure, key dynamics, potential co-benefits of these measures, equity considerations, which are the slider settings, and more information that can be used. For example, FA frequent questions and studies. So it's a very complete instrument. When it comes to play with the participants mostly suggest fostering the renewables. And you see, I will start again. You have 3.6. Now I start I use this renewables, 100% fostering 100% renewables of the possibility, and you see the change from 3.6 to 3.4. If you see this globally, this really graphs, what we are doing is lowering the price of renewables. You see, they go down. But if you have a great quantity of free energy, what you will get is the global demands of energy goes up. So that's a Jevons paradox. If you have cheap energy, people will use more because it's cheap. So it's not much big, but it shows that renewables have a limited impact on this on the global mean temperature. Another proposed action by people is to plant more trees, as China and India are doing. But you see that there is not also the impact is very low. The greenhouse net emissions per year go a little lower, but not much, and temperature keeps at 3.4 degrees. So what else can we do? We can, a new magic zero carbon technology, like have the fusion of hydrogen. And you see that it's in here in orange, we can see the change, but this competes, we'll see the 12 graph. So energy demands is stable. And what happens is that the orange line goes up here. We have more orange energy user, but the green one goes down. So there is a competition between renewables and a new technology. And the temperature drops only 1/10 of a degree. So this is not a solution to climate change, because it takes time to get a new solution and market it and distribute it all over the world. Another thing is taxing the fossil industries. We will see that these two, what we get with this is, well, temperature goes down, but we have not reached the Paris Agreement. We are very far away from 2 degrees. We are a little better, but that's not the solution, because with 3 degrees, you have the certification of Central America and the certification of the North or South America. Well, let's see what else what we do. One of the most important measures that you can take, and we show this in the exercises that mostly last 2 hours, is carbon pricing. That is setting a direct tax on fossil fuel consumption. And this has several effects, like for example, I will repeat the climate action. You see The blue things moves, the slider, blue slider moves, and you see the changes. And this lowers energy demand. You see this graph changes. You have less energy demand with carbon pricing. That reduces temperature. And you have the prices of energy. You have a much lower price for renewables, and fossil fuels like coal get very more costly. And this is the blue line is natural gas. But we are much closer to the Paris Agreement, but we would need also energy efficiency in the transportation and the buildings. Like if you isolate windows and walls, you use less energy in winter for heating and less energy for air conditioning in summer. So this helps, and electrification also of transportation and buildings also helps a little. Then you could try to keep your forests, and most importantly is reducing methane emissions. And this, now we are very, very near the Paris Agreement, and using a little of technological removal, then we will be inside the Paris Agreement. So these are the impacts, and this is the temperature change. We have a successful climate change scenario. Well, let's get to some conclusions. First, there is no silver bullet. What we have is a silver buckshot. That is, we have to do several climate actions at the same time to get to the Paris Agreement. And you see that it's possible to reach the Paris Agreement and to save the climate, to have our kids have the same climate that we're experiencing now. But the issue is that all nations should, must, and can work together to reach this Paris Agreement. It's the best that we can do for our children, for the people that we love. We as people are emotional beings that think. That is why psychologists tell us. So I ask you to connect this scenario that you can see it is possible. According to the best available science, it is possible to reach this agreement, and it should be in our hearts, because our hearts are the things that move us to success. Energy efficiency is possible. It's something that we can do, and we do it in the Antarctica or in the Arctic. We can do it at home. Keeping our forests and planting more trees are being done by India and China and the African countries at the south of the Sahara Desert. Technological removal of carbon dioxide is being explored. There are many pilot projects, and we should get funding for them. Methane should be reduced. One of the cheapest things is to cap all petroleum drills in the Permian Basin, because they are emitting methane, and no one is profiting from that. The same happens in China with the coal mines. We had pockets of methane. They should be sealed. Sealing these pockets of methane is cheap, and it can be done, and it has a great impact on climate. Methane. Fostering renewables are growing at so a fast speed that we have to reduce the baseline scenario from 4 degrees to 3.6. And carbon price is good because it acts now. It has no delay. Government just state what the carbon price is. Argentina has a carbon price. So if Argentina can have carbon price scheme any country can. So it's possible, it can be done, but we need action now. So I'm going to end this presentation with a thank you. Thank you for attending this presentation. You can reach me at this email, fracassi@itba.edu.ar. And thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you.